Last week, this decking job helped to save Paul's week, after a last-minute cancellation left him £900 out of pocket. But what he found underneath changed the scope of the job completely.
I've lifted one of the boards and yeah, it's absolutely shot. Absolutely knackered.
Earlier in the week.
Well, I'm on site at the next job now, block paved driveway, quite a big area, bread and butter stuff. There were quite a lot of weeds in this actually, so I attended 2 weeks ago to put weed killer down. You can see quite clearly that these have all died off.
When cleaning block paving, Paul usually uses a canny turbo nozzle rather than his rotary flat surface cleaner. This way he can be sure that all the moss and dead weeds are removed from the joints.
I've run out of water, forgot to switch the tap on, arrived here with half a tank and it's all gone.
Whilst Paul is waiting for his tanks to fill, he looks around to see what he can be getting on with.
I'm just pausing for a moment to take a closer look at this front door step. It's topped with black limestone, which is actually quite a tricky surface to clean. The reason being is that the stone oxidises really quite readily. As a matter of fact, when it first goes down, it's dark grey, sometimes even black in colour, although you do get shades of blue as well. But after a short while being exposed to the elements, it's just gone to a mid-grey, even lighter in some cases. And that's the oxidisation, that's just the atmosphere that's affecting the stone itself. And as a matter of fact, we can see it's just starting to dry out here, and you see how pale in colour it is compared with the colour when it's wet. The trouble is, if you take a pressure washer to that, you can mark it really quite easily. You can end up with sort of wavy lines and so on, and it looks pretty unattractive. So what I'm going to do is give this a scrub with the detergent. I'm going to use Max Clean Pro from Pure Seal. It'll get rid of all of the surface grime, got a tiny bit of biocide in it as well, so it'll also sanitise it. And then I'm just going to give it a rinse off. So this is the stuff. Now you don't need much of this. Dilute 200 mils in 5 litres of water. Well, I'm not going to need anything like 5 litres of the finished product, so I'm just going to put about 50 mil to a litre of water, and that's a ratio of what, about 20 to 1 I think. See how it's taken on a bit of a brown colour straight away, and that's because it's getting straight to work, attacking the biofilm, exploding all of those cells. They're going pop, bleeding out so to speak, and that is proof that this is working immediately. Right, I'll leave that to dwell for a little while, do its stuff. Important not to let it dry out. Come back in a few minutes and give it a rinse off.
Cleaning the step didn't take too long, and during the time his water tank has filled up enough to carry on with the driveway.
So I'm just going to give this black limestone step a rinse off. Nice wide fan nozzle, and I'm not going to get too close to it. There we go. Right, we've got a small mountain of sludge here to get rid of. I did speak to the homeowner about whether we could dispose of it on site, and he'd prefer that I didn't, so I need to get this bagged up and take it away.
When rinsing down after a clean, it's important to do the flowers and shrubs as well. Dirt and sand get everywhere and you don't get any thanks for leaving the place dirtier than when you arrived. Paul's pressure washer is fitted with a chemical system. It allows him to apply different treatments to the surfaces he works on. In this case, it's a preparation that will sanitise the blocks and eat away those pesky black spots. And the last job for today is to give everything a good rinse down.
I'm pleased with that. It's come up really clean. I won't get a chance to sand it today, so back in a day or two to finish off.
The next morning, Paul is heading back to North Rigton, where he'll resume work on the decking restoration job that he began in the previous episode. It's likely this will take a couple of days to complete.
So back in North Rigton at this decking restoration job. It's been drying out for several days now and it's looking really clean. I'm here to assess one of the joists which we know to be rotten. I've lifted one of the boards and yeah, it's absolutely shot. This is probably going to need lifting in its entirety, but I'm going to have to remove all of these boards in order to get at it. Fortunately, the screws are coming out without too much difficulty. It is a big help having an impact screwdriver though. Often I find with older decks the screws become brittle and snap easily, and when that happens the only alternative is to literally crowbar up the boards, and it often causes a lot of damage. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to save most of these boards, if not all of them. Well, I've got a number of the boards up now, sufficient to be able to assess the condition of the subframe, the joists. And this deck is just saying, you know, I'm a DIY job. The joists are of 3x2 carcassing timber. That's designed for doing interior stud walls. It's not designed for outdoor use because it hasn't been pressure treated, tunnelized. And it's very clear to me that a few of these are going to need replacement. A lot of these screws have been over tightened such that they've pierced the top of the board and created a little pocket where water can stand. And in other cases they've been screwed far too close to the cut end of the board. But most of the deck is holding up pretty well, and the homeowners have decided let's just repair what we can, keep it going for a few more years. So I'm going to do some local repairs just to get these rotten joists replaced. The homeowners had some timber donated by somebody who had a deck dismantled at some point. So I've got some 6-inch joists and some decking boards. It'll save a little bit of money, and the customer is keen to recycle where possible. Dangerous occupation, this.
Following this afternoon's visit, Paul will return with Henry tomorrow morning. They'll continue with the repairs and then get the deck sanded, ready to oil.
Right, continuing with the repairs, we've got another joist that's really rotten and needs to come out. Absolutely knackered. Trouble is, it's got all of these noggins in between. Not a bad thing in itself, but it's going to be quite tricky to get out. No easy way, we've just got to cut it. Good.
It's Henry's first time using a reciprocating saw, but he's taking to it well.
Right, we've got that joist pieced in there, so I'd say that's an adequate repair. So we'll get the deck reboarded now and then we can start sanding.
The removed decking boards were all of different lengths, so Henry had been tasked with numbering them so they could be relaid in the correct order.
That'll do. Well, with all the repairs finished, it's time to get sanding.
Whilst Paul makes a start with the large decking sander, Henry is using a handheld machine to get right into the edges. But this isn't quite what Paul meant when he told Henry to put his back into it. Paul's decking sander is manufactured in Germany and is one of only a few models in the UK. Rather than a conventional sanding drum, it uses abrasive nylon filaments and is the only upright machine capable of sanding deep into the grooves.
Well, with all this humid weather, we've had a couple of false starts getting the oiling done, but today's the day. Well, as usual, the oil I'm going to be using is from Expert Stain and Seal from Woodcare UK, and the customer has chosen the chestnut finish, which is a really nice sort of mid-brown colour. It's very attractive, actually. And being a darker pigment, it'll do a really good job of evening out these wood tones. For instance, this lighter area here where we replaced some boards over the manhole as compared with the slightly darker boards from the old weathered timber. So I've estimated about 3 tins of oil. I brought 4 just in case, nothing worse than running out. And I'm going to blend them all together just to mitigate any risk of inconsistency between batches. I'm going to give them a good stir in the can as well, just to make sure we get any solids that have settled to the bottom. Well, with all those fiddly bits done now with the detailing brush, time to get the big guns out. Big fat decking brush, huge time saver. An unfortunate feature of some decks is that the boards are set very wide apart. In this case it's about 10mm on average, but in some places it's closer to 20. Now personally, when I'm reboarding a deck, I set a gap of between 4 and 6mm, and to ensure consistency I use one of those plastic glazing packers so that they're always exactly the same. Now it's not practical, not cost effective, nor is it necessary to oil the sides of the boards. A 4 to 6mm spacing will ensure plenty of ventilation so that no water ever gets trapped, and because the boards are close together, any areas that don't catch the oil are not visible. But it's a completely different story with these big wide gaps. And especially when using a darker oil, that really shows up. The brush itself is too thick to get into most of the grooves, so how do you ensure proper coverage? Well, one way is to go across the boards, so. But it does mean that the oil finds the edges of the boards and you just leave it to spread out. Capillary action will draw it along. A little check later on just to make sure you haven't missed anywhere and go over with a small brush. But one thing about this method is that you'll put extra oil into the grooves, and it's important to draw that out because we don't want it to be pooling. It won't cure properly. But it's all completed now, it's looking great and loads better than it was when I started.